The ultimate guide to blaxploitation movies films you must see. Are you a fan of action-packed, gritty, and socially conscious films? Then get ready to discover blaxploitation movies that you need to see. Blaxploitation movies were a cultural phenomenon in the 1970s, featuring black actors and actresses in lead roles, and addressing issues such as racism, poverty, and police brutality. The term blaxploitation could sound like a negative label, but these films were not only entertaining but also groundbreaking, as they challenged traditional Hollywood stereotypes and gave a voice to the black community. In this video, we will be looking at blaxploitation movies that you must see, based on their impact, popularity, and critical acclaim. 1. Superfly, 1972. Directed by Gordon Parks Jr. and starring Ron O'Neal, this film follows a cocaine dealer trying to make one last big score before getting out of the game. 2. Shaft, 1971. Directed by Gordon Parks and starring Richard Roundtree, this film follows a private detective hired to find a kidnapped girl. 3. Foxy Brown, 1974. Directed by Jack Hill and starring Pam Grier, this film follows a woman seeking revenge against a drug lord who killed her boyfriend. 4. The Mac, 1973. Directed by Michael Campus and starring Max Julien, this film follows a young man who becomes a pimp to escape poverty but struggles to keep his business afloat. 5. Coffee, 1973. Directed by Jack Hill and starring Pam Grier, this film follows a nurse who turns vigilante to avenge her sister's drug addiction. 6. Dolomite, 1975. Directed by Derville Martin and starring Rudy Ray Moore, this film follows a pimp and nightclub owner who fights against corrupt cops and drug dealers. 7. Across 110th Street, 1972. Directed by Barry Shear and starring Yaphet Kotto, this film follows two cops trying to solve a robbery and murder in Harlem. 8. The Spook Who Sat by the Door, 1973. Directed by Ivan Dixon and starring Lawrence Cook, this film follows a black man who joins the CIA but uses his training to start a revolution. 9. Lady Sings the Blues. Directed by Sidney J. Furie and starring Diana Ross, this film follows the life of legendary jazz singer Billie Holiday. 10. Black Caesar, 1973. Directed by Larry Cohen and starring Fred Williamson, this film follows a gangster who rises to power in New York City. 11. Blackula, 1972. Directed by William Crane and starring William Marshall, this film follows an African prince who becomes a vampire after refusing to support the slave trade. 12. The Human Tornado, 1976. Directed by Cliff Roquemore and starring Rudy Ray Moore, this film follows Dolomite as he fights against the mafia and corrupt politicians. 13. Cotton Comes to Harlem, 1970. Directed by Ossie Davis and starring Godfrey Cambridge, this film follows two detectives trying to recover stolen money from a black nationalist group. 14. Cleopatra Jones, 1973. Directed by Jack Starrett and starring Tamara Dobson, this film follows a government agent who battles a drug queenpin. 15. Slaughter, 1972. Directed by Jack Starrett and starring Jim Brown, this film follows a Vietnam veteran seeking revenge against a crime boss. 16. Black Mama, White Mama, 1973. Directed by Eddie Romero and starring Pam Grier and Margaret Markoff, this film follows two female prisoners escaping from a corrupt prison. 17. 3 The Hard Way, 1974. Directed by Gordon Parks Jr. and starring Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, and Jim Kelly, this film follows three friends trying to stop a white supremacist plot. 18. Sheba, Baby, 1975. Directed by William Girdler and starring Pam Grier, this film follows a private investigator who takes on a drug syndicate. 19. The Legend of Nigger Charlie, 1972. Directed by Martin Goldman and starring Fred Williamson, this film follows a slave who escapes and fights against his former owner. 20. Willie Dynamite, 1973. Directed by Gilbert Moses and starring Roscoe Orman, Dana Sands and Thalmus Rasulala, this film follows a pimp who refuses to agree to a mandate assigning pimps in specific districts. 21. Shaft's Big Score. 1972. Directed by Gordon Parks and starring Richard Roundtree, this film follows Shaft as he investigates a robbery and murder. 22. Black Belt Jones, 1974. Directed by Robert Close and starring Jim Kelly, this film follows a martial arts expert who battles a crime boss. 23. Cooley High, 1975. Directed by Michael Schultz and starring Glynn Turman, Lawrence Hilton Jacobs and Garrett Morris, this film looked at the lives of black inner-city high school kids. 24. Uptown Saturday Night, 1974. Directed by Sidney Poitier and starring Bill Cosby, Sidney Poitier, and Harry Belafonte, Poitier and a bearded Cosby go on a wild goose chase through a series of gangsters. 25. Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, 1971. Directed by Melvin Van Peebles and starring Simon Chuckster, Melvin Van Peebles, and Hubert Scales. A film about a gigolo who runs from the police after being set up for a murder he didn't commit.